Hello, hello. Well, good morning, America. I miss you. I'm back in a few days. But, anyways, over here in Europe, everybody's talking about geopolitics and some pretty crazy news. That's all they've been talking about in Europe for the entire morning. But the truth is, there's been a pretty crazy political event, geopolitical event, right? Geopolitics. And BTC is unshaken. Actually, BTC is up. We've been at 90K for what, 20 minutes now? This is an old screenshot. We've been at 90K, and that's despite some pretty noteworthy news. And this noteworthy news, by the way, if you've been following Bitcoin, you know we've had this fear at the least since the Iran strikes, and that was 7 months ago now. I remember making at least 5 videos of this potentially being a thing, but then Bitcoin will Bitcoin. I'm very positively surprised that Bitcoin is up, because if you remember Iran strikes, Bitcoin was way down when that happened, and that happened on a weekend, just the same. So this time, so pretty crazy news. Of course, if you don't know, the news is the US, the DEA. So it seems to be like a separate. I don't really know how this all works. It's not my area of expertise. But the Drug Enforcement Agency captured Maduro and his wife, and so. Again, this part of the world, I don't follow it too much, but it's geopolitically significant. I know, actually, I live in Texas. There's a lot of people from Venezuela. I know someone from Venezuela. I can tell you they're probably really happy right now. But that's an N of one, right? That's an N of one. So take that with a grain of salt. I'm sure the population is divided, but I think this is going to have perhaps an impact on the midterms, which is how much of the Hispanic population, how many are happy or how many are unhappy about this. The news coverage seems to be very disparate between the U.S. news coverage, fairly positive, I would say, and maybe European news coverage, maybe more neutral, slightly slanted, negative. I don't know how they cover it in Latin America. I don't really speak Spanish or anything. But the point is, going back to Bitcoin, because my channel is about Bitcoin. Right? My channel is about stocks, it's about Bitcoin, it's about money. Bitcoin is holding up steady. It's holding up pretty well. And it's even up a little bit. And let's wait for 10 a.m. in the US. So in a little while still, let's wait for 10 a.m. in the US to see if the speech of Trump in Mar-a-Lago, let's see if it rocks the markets. And by the markets, I mean only Bitcoin. Because unfortunately, these news only happen on the weekends. It's quite frustrating, actually. It's quite frustrating. We need 24/7 markets. Please, I want 24/7 markets. This is so annoying. Anyway, I don't have much to tell you except that I'm very surprised by this news. This is crazy stuff, and I'm very pleasantly surprised by how Bitcoin is holding. And quickly, this is going to take only a second, but Stretch, did you see the price action of Stretch yesterday? Price action of Stretch yesterday, 99.67. We went way up yesterday. And over trading day like this, we are at 100. So this is very, very, very positive for strategy, very positive for preferreds of strategy. Note how yesterday, Friday the 2nd of January 2026, yesterday, a lot of stocks, data centers, AI, small caps, by the way. This did not impact the mega caps. You may remember mega caps didn't do too well yesterday, but Tesla was way down, mega caps didn't do too well. All of the small caps, CleanSpark, Nebius, they did all very, very well yesterday. It turns out the market was selling off small caps, not really picking winners and losers, just selling it all off. Today, Stretch is up. Stretch, by the way, would be considered a small cap as far as I'm concerned. This is what, 2.4 billion. Anyways, Stretch really up because of the increase in the yield. Anyways, the topic of this video is a dual topic, geopolitics plus Stretch up. So as strategy investors, we celebrate that Stretch is way up. We also celebrate that Bitcoin, for now, like I said, we're waiting on the 10 a.m. Eastern time speech, but for now, Bitcoin is actually up on this news. And then, I want to kind of tell you my takeaways, which it's tough to find a theme for 2026 because 2025 ended nothing like consensus. Nothing like what everybody expected. Nothing happened. So I see some patterns for 2026, but I think in 2026, seatbelts on for geopolitics. I think we might have more geopolitics. Tariff, maybe, or maybe we're done with tariffs in 2025, and maybe in 2026 we got to look forward to more geopolitical type event. And unfortunately, these tend to happen at night. If they happen at night, the US markets are closed. And if the US markets are closed, then our Bitcoin is not doing too well. So that's also an aspect of that. The US markets being closed when this type of geopolitical news tend to happen. And they happen at night or on weekend. Of course, today it was not only night, but it was also a weekend. And I think the phrase, the long term, the stock market is a weighing machine. Of course, a famous phrase of Warren Buffett, who retired, by the way, 3 days ago. That phrase never sang more true. If you're going to have a highly volatile next few years, you're investing for perhaps 2030 and beyond. And, like the swings of a pendulum, likely if the 2020s are extremely volatile, the 2030s may not be as volatile. The world doesn't remain volatile for 100 years. It goes through swings of pendulums. You have decades that are good. You have decades that are bad. I've always called the 2020s a very, very tough decade to invest, a very tough decade to understand. That means the 2030s might be an easier decade. If you're investing today, likely you will still hold all of your companies, all of your stocks in the 2030s, and we may have a peaceful, cozy decade in the 2030s. I think right now the turmoil continues, the instability, the uncertainty continues. And I think in 2026, the midterms could be a big part of that uncertainty. And I have no issue imagining 4 months, 3 months of nothing at all going on in the stock market until we wait to see these elections in the midterms to see what it is. I think a key question for us as far as stock investors is how will the Latin voting community in the United States, how will they perceive the attack on Venezuela? Again, I have an N of 1. My N of 1, I can only imagine how happy he is right now. But that's an N of 1. Sample of one person. It's not a good sample. And keep in mind, if you look at any of the samples of bigger media, you can influence a sample to have it kind of say what you want to know. So this is one of the situations where if we want to know where the midterms head in 2026, we might have to look at prediction markets, betting markets, Kalshi, poly market, because surveys, unfortunately, and even what people say, unfortunately, is what people say really what people think, right? That's also another question. For now, it's 7 a.m. in the U.S. It seems, like I said earlier, the media coverage in the U.S. is I would say, fairly positive on average. I would say it's neutral to negative in Europe somewhat. I should have gone on Spanish-speaking media. That'd be very interesting to see what they say on Spanish-speaking media. Anyways, this is a 2026 defining event. This might be actually a decade defining event. This is a pretty big deal. The president of Venezuela being arrested by the DEA and brought to the United States. That's a pretty huge deal. The fact that Bitcoin is flat is worth celebration. It's a lot of noise. Let's expect more noise in 2026. Let's expect perhaps even more noise in just a cozy, 2 hours and a half for the speech. Know what's really going on. Bitcoin's holding up. We're celebrating. Anyways, no investment advice, no financial advice, no geopolitical advice, no advice, just entertainment, hoping you're entertained. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for watching.